The diplomatic station orbited Nexus Prime like a giant metal flower with petals made of glass and steel. Inside the main conference room, Commander Jake Mitchell sat at a small table that looked tiny compared to the massive chairs around it. The alien delegates towered over him, their forms casting long shadows across the polished floor. Ambassador Valthara of the Zephyrian Empire stood nearly 9 feet tall, her body made of what looked like living crystal that caught and bent the light in strange ways. When she moved, tiny chimes seemed to ring in the air around her. Her voice sounded like wind through cave systems when she spoke. Commander Mitchell, your species has presented the same requests for the past 20 years, she said, her crystalline fingers drumming against the table surface. Equal representation in the Galactic Council, unrestricted colony expansion, fair trade agreements. These things are not given freely to any species. General Koros of the Hegemony Military Alliance shifted in his chair, which groaned under his weight. The reptilian warrior stood 8 feet tall even when sitting, his scaled hide the color of old bronze. Scars covered his arms and face, telling stories of 100 battles. His yellow eyes fixed on Jake like a predator studying prey. Your people make adequate soldiers and useful laborers, Koros said, his voice like rocks grinding together. But leadership requires strength. Your homeworld provides good workers for our mining operations and decent troops for border conflicts. Why ask for more when you already serve a purpose? The third delegate, Counselor Merkin from the Trade Syndicate, barely looked up from the datapad in his 6-fingered hands. His pale blue skin seemed to glow faintly under the conference room lights, and his large black eyes never seemed to blink. When he spoke, his voice was flat and emotionless. The economic data supports current arrangements, Merkin stated. Human labor costs remain low while output stays high. Changing these relationships would disrupt profitable systems across 17 sectors. The Syndicate cannot support such inefficiency. Lieutenant Kelly Brooks sat beside Jake, her hands folded carefully in her lap. She had been his aide for 3 years, and in that time she had watched the same scene play out dozens of times. Different rooms, different delegates, always the same result. Her green eyes stayed focused on her notes, but Jake could see the tension in her shoulders. Jake took a slow breath before responding. He had given this same speech so many times he could recite it in his sleep, but protocol demanded he try again. Honored delegates, humanity has contributed significantly to galactic stability and prosperity. Our engineers maintain 70% of the jump gate network. Our farmers feed colonies across 43 systems. Our scientists have developed new medical treatments that have saved millions of lives. All true, Valthara interrupted, her crystal form shimmering with what might have been amusement. And all work that your species performs adequately under proper supervision. You speak of contributions as if they were gifts freely given, but they are simply the terms of existing contracts. Koros leaned forward, his massive frame making the chair creak again. Your people signed agreements when Earth first joined the galactic community. Mining quotas, military service obligations, technology sharing requirements. Honor these commitments before asking for new privileges. Jake felt Kelly's foot tap against his under the table, a subtle warning signal they had developed over years of diplomatic meetings. He glanced at her notes and saw she had written a single word in the margin. Patience. General Koros, those agreements were signed 52 years ago by representatives who had no understanding of galactic politics or economics, Jake said carefully. The terms were heavily weighted in favor of established powers. We simply asked for renegotiation based on current contributions and capabilities. Merkin finally looked up from his datapad, his black eyes reflecting the room lights like mirrors. Current capabilities suggest humans excel at following instructions and completing assigned tasks. Leadership capabilities remain unproven. The Syndicate has no data supporting expanded human authority. The meeting continued for 2 more hours, following the same patterns Jake had experienced countless times before. The aliens presented the same arguments about earned privilege and proven strength. Jake countered with evidence of human achievements and potential. Kelly took careful notes that would become part of another report filed away in Earth's diplomatic archives. When the session finally ended, the three delegates left without ceremony. Valthara's crystal form chimed softly as she walked. Koros's heavy footsteps shook the floor. Merkin glided silently like a ghost. They had other meetings, other species to manage, other resources to allocate. Jake and Kelly remained in their seats for several minutes after the aliens departed. The conference room felt larger and quieter without the towering figures dominating the space. Kelly finally closed her notebook and looked at her commander. "Same result as always," she said quietly. "Same result as always," Jake agreed. He pulled out his personal communication device, a small rectangular screen that connected directly to Earth through quantum entanglement protocols. The message waiting for him was short and simple, just 5 words that made his heart beat faster. "The gloves are coming off." Kelly saw his expression change and leaned closer to read the message. Her eyes widened slightly, but she said nothing. Years of diplomatic service had taught both of them when to speak and when to stay silent. 12,000 light-years away, Dr. Ben Carter stood in a control room carved deep into the Rocky Mountains. Banks of monitors showed star charts, fleet positions, resource allocations, and dozens of other data streams that painted a picture of human activity across the galaxy. Technicians worked quietly at their stations, monitoring communications and updating status reports. The room looked like any other military command center, with one important difference. Half the monitors displayed information that officially did not exist. Project files with innocent names like Garden Party and Homecoming. Construction schedules for facilities that appeared on no public records. Personnel assignments for operations that had no official authorization. Carter was 67 years old, with gray hair and lined face that spoke of decades spent making difficult decisions. He had been planning for this moment since he was a young officer watching Earth's first diplomatic missions return with empty hands and broken promises. "Sir," his aide Colonel Amy Chun said as she approached with a tablet full of status updates. "All deep space facilities report ready status. Construction teams have completed final preparations. We're waiting for your authorization." Carter nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on a large screen showing the current positions of human workers throughout the galaxy. Millions of people scattered across hundreds of worlds, all of them connected by communications networks that their alien employers never bothered to monitor or understand. "Begin Phase 1, he said quietly. "Send the recall codes." Across the galaxy, humans working in alien facilities received simple messages on their personal devices. Brief notifications that looked like routine schedule updates or administrative announcements. Most of the aliens who saw these messages ignored them completely, assuming they were just more human bureaucracy. The messages all said essentially the same thing: time to come home. 3 weeks after the failed diplomatic meeting, every major power in the galaxy received the same transmission. The message came through official channels, properly coded and transmitted with all the correct diplomatic protocols. Nothing about it seemed unusual except for its content. President Lisa Martinez stood behind a simple wooden podium in the White House, the American flag hanging motionless in the background. Her dark hair was pulled back in a professional style, and her blue suit was perfectly pressed. She looked like any other political leader giving a routine address, but her words carried weight that few people understood. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, her voice calm and measured, "humanity wishes to inform you of a clerical error that has come to our attention. For the past 52 years, we have been operating under certain assumptions about our relationships with other galactic species. Recent events have suggested these assumptions may need revision." On the bridge of the hegemony dreadnought Sovereign Will, Captain Roy Stevens watched the transmission with growing confusion. The massive warship floated at the edge of human space, one of 12 vessels assigned to keep Earth's expanding population contained within acceptable boundaries. Stevens was a career military officer, 43 years old, with graying temples and the steady nerves that came from commanding ships in deep space. His tactical officer, Commander Blake Turner, frowned at the screen showing President Martinez. Turner was younger than his captain, with the sharp eyes and quick reflexes of someone who had grown up in the military. He had served on alien vessels for 15 years and thought he understood how humans behaved under pressure. "Sir, this is unusual phrasing for a diplomatic communication," Turner said quietly. "Humans typically follow standard protocols for these transmissions." Stevens nodded, but kept his attention on the broadcast. Something about the woman's tone bothered him, though he could not identify exactly what seemed wrong. President Martinez continued speaking, her expression never changing from polite professionalism. "It has come to our attention that our previous policy of cooperation and restraint has been misinterpreted by some parties as weakness or submission. This was never our intention, and we apologize for any confusion this may have caused." In the Zephyrian Council chambers on Nexus Prime, Ambassador Velthara watched the transmission with 3 other high-ranking officials. Her crystalline form shifted colors slightly as she processed the human's words, a sign of irritation among her species. The other Zephyrians remained still, their crystal bodies reflecting the chamber's lights in complex patterns. "The humans speak in riddles," one of them said, his voice chiming like distant bells. "What is the purpose of this communication?" Velthara's form darkened to a deep blue, indicating serious thought. "I believe they are attempting to project strength through." Careful word choice. "Their recent diplomatic failures have likely created political pressure on their leadership." The transmission continued with President Martinez maintaining the same neutral tone. "Therefore, humanity will be conducting a comprehensive review of all our galactic relationships over the coming months. This review will examine the terms and conditions of existing agreements, the balance of contributions and benefits in current arrangements, and the long-term sustainability of present policies." General Koros received the message while reviewing troop deployments in his command center on the Hegemony homeworld. The massive reptilian warrior stood before a tactical display showing the positions of military units across 17 sectors. Red dots marked human auxiliary units serving under alien command. Green dots showed hegemony regular forces, and blue dots indicated allied species contributions. His aide, Colonel Vextar, pointed at the transmission with one clawed finger. "General, the humans appear to be making threats disguised as diplomatic language." Koros laughed, the sound like boulders falling down a mountainside. "Let them review whatever they wish. Their military contributes barely 3% of our total forces, and their equipment remains generations behind our technology. If they become troublesome, we will remind them of their place." The final part of President Martinez's message carried the same calm tone, but her words seemed to hang in the air longer than they should have. "We recommend that all interested parties prepare for potential adjustments to current arrangements. Humanity remains committed to galactic peace and prosperity, but we believe that true cooperation requires mutual respect and fair treatment for all participants." The transmission ended abruptly, without the usual diplomatic pleasantries or formal closing statements. The screen went dark, leaving viewers across the galaxy to wonder what exactly they had just witnessed. On Earth, Dr. Carter walked through an underground facility that stretched for miles beneath the Colorado mountains. The complex had been under construction for 30 years. Built by human workers using materials and techniques that never appeared in any official records. Massive assembly bays lined the main corridor, each one containing sleek vessels that looked nothing like the bulky cargo ships and mining barges that humans typically operated. The ships were dark gray, almost black, with smooth hulls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No visible weapons ports or engine exhausts marked their surfaces, but technicians swarmed over them, making final adjustments to systems that existed nowhere in standard galactic databases. Colonel Amy Chun approached Carter with a tablet displaying status reports from similar facilities on 18 different worlds. Each location appeared to be a standard mining operation or agricultural center, but underground construction had been proceeding for decades. "All sites report green status." "Sir," she said quietly, "the first wave is ready for deployment. Operation Garden Party can commence on your order." Carter nodded slowly, his eyes moving from one ship to another. Each vessel represented years of careful planning and secret development. Human engineers had studied alien technology for decades, then improved upon it using methods that their teachers never suspected existed. "Begin Phase 1, he said. "It's time our galactic neighbors learned the true cost of human politeness." Across the galaxy, humans working in alien facilities began receiving new messages on their personal communication devices. The messages looked like routine work schedule updates or administrative announcements, a kind of bureaucratic communication that alien supervisors had learned to ignore over the years. Mining supervisors on asteroid facilities noticed that their human workers seemed unusually quiet during the next shift. Engineers maintaining jump gate networks completed their assigned tasks with typical efficiency but declined overtime work for the first time in years. Agricultural specialists on colony worlds finished their daily responsibilities, then returned to their quarters instead of socializing with alien colleagues. The changes were subtle, almost invisible to casual observation. But something fundamental had shifted in the way humans move through their daily routines. They still performed their jobs with professional competence, but the easy cooperation and willing extra effort that alien employers had taken for granted began to disappear. Within 72 hours of President Martinez's transmission, every human facility in the galaxy had received the same simple instruction: prepare for extraction. The first sign that something had changed came from the Zephyrian mining colony on Kepler 442b. The facility extracted rare metals from deep underground caverns, work that required human expertise with tunnel systems and heavy machinery. For 23 years, the operation had run smoothly with minimal supervision. Captain Roy Stevens received the distress call while his battle group patrolled the outer rim of human space. The message was brief and confused, sent by the Zephyrian colony administrator, who seemed unable to explain what had happened. "All human workers have disappeared," the transmission stated. "Equipment remains operational, no signs of violence or sabotage. Request immediate investigation." Stevens ordered his ships to jump to the Kepler system, expecting to find evidence of human rebellion or perhaps an attack by raiders. The Sovereign will emerged from hyperspace alongside 2 escort cruisers, their sensors immediately scanning the planet below. The mining colony looked normal from orbit. Power signatures showed all systems functioning correctly, and automated defense platforms responded to their approach with proper identification codes. Nothing seemed wrong until Stevens sent down an investigation team. Commander Blake Turner led the team that explored the empty facility. They found meals half-finished in the cafeteria, workstations with tools laid out for the next shift, and personal belongings still in the dormitories. The human workers had simply vanished without taking anything with them. "Sir, there's no sign of struggle anywhere," Turner reported over his communicator. "It looks like they just walked away in the middle of their normal routine." Stevens frowned as he studied the colony layout on his ship's main screen. 3,000 human workers had been living and working on Kepler 442b, supporting families and building lives in the underground complex. People did not simply abandon everything they owned without reason. The mystery deepened when they found Administrator Pete Walsh waiting for them in the main office. The middle-aged human sat calmly behind his desk, reviewing paperwork as if nothing unusual had happened. He looked up when Turner's team entered, his expression polite but distant. "Commander." "Turner, thank you for responding so quickly," Walsh said. "I apologize for any confusion the earlier transmission may have caused." Turner studied the man carefully, looking for signs of stress or coercion. Walsh appeared completely normal, dressed in his standard work uniform with his graying hair neatly combed. His office showed no signs of disturbance, and he seemed genuinely calm. "Administrator Walsh, where are your workers?" Turner asked directly. "They have been temporarily recalled for reassignment," Walsh replied, consulting a document on his desk. "All human personnel received new orders yesterday evening. The recall was conducted in accordance with standard emergency protocols." "What emergency?" Turner demanded. Walsh looked up with mild surprise, as if the question was unexpected. I'm not authorized to discuss operational details with non-human personnel. For information regarding the status of human workers, please contact Earth Diplomatic Services through official channels. Similar reports began arriving from across the galaxy within hours. Human mining crews on asteroid facilities completed their shifts, then failed to report for work the next day. Maintenance teams responsible for Jumpgate networks logged off their systems and did not return. Agricultural specialists on colony worlds finished their daily tasks, then disappeared from their quarters overnight. The vanishings followed the same pattern everywhere. No violence, no theft, no signs of panic or coercion. The humans simply left, taking only personal items they could carry and leaving behind everything else exactly as they found it. Ambassador Velthara received reports from 17 different Zephyr facilities within the first week. Her crystalline form darkened to deep red as she reviewed the data, a color that indicated extreme agitation among her species. The economic impact was already becoming visible as mining operations ground to a halt and maintenance schedules fell behind. "This is impossible," she said to her aide, her voice chiming with harsh overtones. "Humans cannot coordinate activities across such distances without our knowledge. Their communication networks are monitored by our security services." Her aide, a younger Zephyrian whose crystal body showed streaks of nervous yellow, consulted his datapad with trembling fingers. "Ambassador, our economic analysts estimate that continued absence of human workers will result in a 40% reduction in resource extraction within 30 days. General Koros faced even worse problems as human soldiers abandoned their posts in hegemony military units. Unlike the civilian workers who simply failed to report for duty, the military personnel followed proper protocols for their departure. They completed their assigned watches, filed appropriate paperwork, and formally requested transfer to Earth Defense Forces." "They cannot do this," Koros roared, his massive frame shaking with rage. "Military service contracts are binding for minimum terms of 5 years. These humans have legal obligations." His staff exchanged nervous glances before Colonel Vexstar spoke carefully. "General, the Human Site Regulation 847C, which allows for emergency recall of personnel to defend their homeworld. Technically, their actions fall within legal parameters." Koros swept his clawed hand across his desk, sending datapads and reports flying across the room. The idea that humans could use military regulations against the hegemony had never occurred to him. For 50 years, they had been reliable soldiers who followed orders without question. The situation grew worse when replacement workers failed to materialize. Other species lacked the human ability to work in dangerous environments for extended periods. Robots could perform simple tasks but required constant supervision and frequent repairs. The complex operations that humans had managed with minimal oversight proved nearly impossible to maintain without them. Trade syndicate facilities reported the most dramatic problems as their carefully balanced economic systems began failing. Counselor Merkin watched profit margins collapse as shipping schedules fell behind and production quotas went unmet. "The humans represented only 12% of our total workforce," he said during an emergency council meeting. "How can their absence cause such widespread disruption?" The answer became clear as analysts studied the data more carefully. Humans did not just perform manual labor in galactic industries. They served as supervisors, technicians, coordinators, and troubleshooters throughout complex systems that had evolved to depend on their presence. Removing them was like pulling support beams from a building. On Earth, President Martinez held another press conference exactly 1 week after the vanishings began. She stood at the same podium, wearing the same professional smile, but her words carried a different weight now. "Citizens of the galaxy, humanity wishes to address recent concerns about the temporary recall of our personnel from various assignments," she said calmly. "This action represents a routine internal review of our workforce deployment policies." She paused, allowing her words to sink in before continuing. "We want to assure our galactic neighbors that human services will resume once we have completed our comprehensive evaluation process. Current estimates suggest this review will require approximately 6 months." assuming all parties demonstrate willingness to engage in good faith negotiations. The transmission ended with the same abrupt cutoff as before, leaving alien leaders across the galaxy to contemplate a future without human workers. For the first time in 50 years, they began to understand exactly how much they had depended on the species they had treated as servants. 6 months passed, and the galaxy began to collapse in ways no one had predicted. The absence of human workers created problems that grew larger every day, spreading through alien civilizations like cracks in broken glass. Captain Roy Stevens stood on the bridge of the Sovereign Will, watching his engineering team struggle with failing systems that had worked perfectly for decades. The massive dreadnought that once inspired fear across 17 sectors now limped through space on backup power, its main engines operating at 30% capacity. "Sir, we've lost another power coupling on Deck 7, reported his chief engineer, a hegemony technician whose scaled hands shook as he delivered the bad news. "Without human maintenance crews, we cannot access the primary repair protocols. The systems were designed to require their smaller size and technical knowledge." Stevens nodded grimly, his face showing the strain of months spent watching his fleet deteriorate. The hegemony had built their ships to be maintained by human technicians, never considering what would happen if those technicians disappeared. Now 12 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy were barely functional, held together by emergency repairs and desperate improvisation. The communication system crackled to life, bringing a message that Stevens had been dreading. Admiral Torvak, Supreme Commander of the Hegemony Fleet, appeared on the main screen. The ancient reptilian warrior looked exhausted, his usually perfect military bearing replaced by visible frustration. "Captain Stevens, you will prepare for immediate departure to the Sol System," the Admiral ordered. "A diplomatic mission has been authorized to negotiate with the humans. Your battle group will provide escort for the peace envoys." Stevens felt his heart sink as he realized what this meant. The mighty hegemony was admitting defeat, reduced to begging for help from the species they had dominated for half a century. The journey to Earth took 2 weeks instead of the usual 3 days. Jump gates throughout the galaxy had been failing without human technicians to maintain their complex systems. Some routes that had been reliable for generations now required manual navigation through dangerous space, adding days or weeks to travel times. Ambassador Velthara traveled aboard the Hegemony flagship, her crystalline form dim with exhaustion and stress. The Zephyrian Empire was facing complete economic collapse as mining operations shut down across 47 systems. Food shortages had begun on colony worlds that depended on imports, and civil unrest was spreading through populations that had never experienced such hardship. "The humans planned this for decades," she said to her aide during the long voyage. "They made themselves essential to our operations, then withdrew their support at exactly the right moment to cause maximum damage." Her aide, whose crystal body showed streaks of fearful orange, consulted status reports from across Zephyrian space. "Ambassador, our analysts estimate that full economic recovery will require at least 5 years, assuming human cooperation returns immediately. Without their assistance, some colonies may become uninhabitable within months." Trade Syndicate representative Merkin rode in silence, his pale blue skin now showing patches of sickly gray that indicated severe stress among his species. The Syndicate's carefully balanced economic networks had been the first to fail when human workers disappeared. Shipping schedules that had operated with precision for generations now functioned in chaos, with cargo ships stranded at facilities that could no longer process their deliveries. When the diplomatic convoy finally reached the Sol System, they found a sight that none of them had expected. The human fleet waiting for them looked nothing like the converted cargo vessels and outdated patrol ships they remembered. Sleek black warships arranged themselves in perfect formations, their hulls seeming to absorb sensor scans like hungry shadows. Admiral Kate Morgan commanded the human fleet from the bridge of the UES Retribution, a vessel that registered on alien sensors as impossibly advanced. The 50-year-old woman had once served as a junior engineer on hegemony ships, learning their weaknesses while her superiors dismissed her as just another useful human technician. Approaching vessels, this is Admiral Morgan of the Earth Defense Fleet. Her voice carried across the communication channels with calm authority. You are cleared for landing at Luna Station. Please note that all weapon systems must be powered down during your visit. This is not a request. Captain Stevens felt a chill run down his spine as he gave the order to power down his ship's weapons. The roles had completely reversed, with humans now dictating terms to their former masters. Luna Station had been transformed from a simple way station into a massive diplomatic complex that rivaled anything in the galaxy. The alien delegates found themselves in a sterile conference room where the tables and chairs were sized for human comfort, forcing the larger aliens to sit awkwardly in furniture that had not been designed for their needs. President Martinez entered the room accompanied by Dr. Ben Carter and a team of advisors that the aliens had never seen before. The woman who had delivered polite diplomatic messages now carried herself with the confidence of someone who held all the advantages in the coming negotiation. "Welcome to Luna Station," she said, taking her seat at the head of the table. "I trust your journey was not too difficult, given the current state of galactic infrastructure." General Koros struggled to maintain his intimidating presence while sitting in a chair that made him look ridiculous. His voice still carried menace, but the effect was diminished by his obvious discomfort. "President Martinez, the hegemony, demands the immediate return of our human personnel. Military contracts cannot be broken without severe consequences." Dr. Carter leaned forward, his weathered face showing no emotion as he addressed the alien general. "General Koros, I believe you misunderstand the current situation. Your military contracts were with individual human soldiers, not with Earth itself. Those individuals have chosen to return home, which is their legal right under galactic law." He activated a holographic display that filled the center of the table, showing a complex network of facilities scattered across hundreds of star systems. "What you see here represents 57 years of careful preparation. Every time you assigned human workers to a new location, we established permanent infrastructure. Every facility you thought was a simple mining operation or agricultural center contained research laboratories and manufacturing capabilities." Ambassador Velthara's crystalline form flickered between colors as she tried to process what she was seeing. "This is impossible. Our security services would have detected such activities." "Your security services saw what we wanted them to see," President Martinez replied. "Human workers building additional storage facilities, expanding living quarters, improving efficiency through better organization. All perfectly normal activities that raised no suspicions." The holographic display zoomed in on specific installations, revealing the true scope of human preparation. Weapons manufacturing facilities, disguised as equipment repair shops. Military training academies hidden within agricultural research centers. Shipyards built into asteroid mining operations where the largest vessels in human history had been constructed in secret. "The question before us today is simple," Dr. Carter continued. "Are you prepared to negotiate fair terms for the resumption of human services, or would you prefer to continue managing your failing civilizations without our assistance?" Trade Syndicate Counselor Merkin spoke for the first time since arriving, his voice barely above a whisper. "What are your terms?" President Martinez smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. "Full membership in the Galactic Council, with voting rights equal to any other species. Immediate cessation of all colonial restrictions on human expansion. Fair trade agreements that provide mutual benefit rather than one-sided exploitation. And formal recognition that humanity is no longer a client species to be managed by our supposed betters." The alien delegates sat in stunned silence as the weight of their situation became clear. They had come to negotiate from a position of weakness, facing a species that had outmaneuvered them completely while maintaining the appearance of cooperation and submission. 1 year later, the galaxy had been transformed in ways that no one could have imagined. The Galactic Council now met in a gleaming new facility orbiting Earth's moon, its chambers designed to accommodate all species as equals rather than maintaining the hierarchy that had existed for centuries. Captain Roy Stevens walked through the corridors of Luna Station, no longer wearing the uniform of the hegemony fleet, but instead dressed in the blue and silver of the new Galactic Cooperation Authority. His rank remained the same, but his purpose had changed completely. Instead of enforcing alien dominance over human space, he now served as a liaison officer helping former enemies learn to work together. The transformation had not been easy for him. Stevens had spent his entire career believing that strength, determined leadership, and that the hegemony's military might give them the right to rule. The events of the past year had forced him to reconsider everything he thought he knew about power and authority. He paused at an observation window overlooking the main docking bay, where ships from dozens of species arrived and departed in carefully coordinated schedules. Human traffic controllers managed the complex flow of vessels with the same efficiency they had once brought to alien mining operations. But now they worked as partners rather than servants. "Remarkable how quickly everything changed," said a voice behind him. Stevens turned to see Commander Lisa Park, his human counterpart in the new organizational structure. She was younger than him by almost a decade, with the kind of calm confidence that came from knowing exactly where she belonged in the world. Her uniform carried the same rank insignia as his, a visible symbol of the equality that the new system demanded. "I still find it difficult to believe sometimes," Stevens admitted. 6 months ago, my people considered humans barely capable of following orders. Now we depend on your guidance for almost everything." Lisa smiled, but her expression showed understanding rather than mockery. "Your people were never stupid, Captain. You just made the mistake of believing your own propaganda about human limitations. When you convince yourself that others are inferior, you stop paying attention to what they're actually capable of." They walked together toward the main conference center, where representatives from all major galactic powers gathered daily to coordinate relief efforts and plan reconstruction projects. The massive chamber that had once housed the exclusive meetings of alien rulers now buzzed with activity as humans worked alongside former enemies to repair the damage caused by months of economic collapse. Ambassador Velthara sat at a workstation, reviewing distribution schedules for medical supplies destined for Zephyrian colony worlds. Her crystalline form had regained much of its former brilliance, though stress lines still showed in the faceted surfaces of her body. She looked up as Stevens and Lisa approached, her voice carrying none of the condescension that had once characterized her speech. "Captain Stevens, Commander Park. The Kepler 442b mining operation is ready to resume full production," she reported. "Human technical teams have completed repairs to the extraction equipment, and Zephyrian workers are prepared to return to their duties under the new safety protocols." The change in her tone still surprised Stevens every time he heard it. The proud ambassador who had once dismissed human contributions as merely adequate now spoke with genuine respect for their capabilities. The collapse of Zephyrian industry had taught her people exactly how much they had depended on skills they had taken for granted. "That's excellent news," Lisa replied, making notes on her datapad. "We'll have the first supply convoy ready to depart within 48 hours. The new partnership agreements should prevent the communication problems that led to the original crisis." Similar conversations took place throughout the facility as former adversaries learned to work as colleagues. General Koros is military, bearing intact despite his reduced circumstances, coordinated security arrangements with human officers who had once served under his command. The massive reptilian warrior had been forced to acknowledge that leadership required more than physical strength and military tradition. Trade syndicate operations had resumed under human oversight, with Counselor Merkin working closely with Earth economic advisors to rebuild the shipping networks that had collapsed during the crisis. The pale blue alien's analytical mind had adapted quickly to new realities, though his species' natural caution made every decision a careful calculation of risk and benefit. Dr. Ben Carter stood in the same underground facility where he had planned humanity's rise to galactic leadership, but now the vast complex served a different purpose. The weapons manufacturing centers had been converted to produce medical equipment and construction materials. The secret shipyards now built cargo vessels, and rescue ships designed to help struggling colonies recover from months of neglect. The transition has proceeded more smoothly than our projections suggested, Colonel Amy Chun reported as she joined him in the main control center. Cooperation levels among former hegemony worlds exceed expectations, and economic recovery indicators show steady improvement across all sectors. Carter nodded, his weathered face showing satisfaction but not triumph. The plan he had spent decades developing had succeeded beyond his greatest hopes, but victory had brought responsibilities he had not fully anticipated. Ruling the galaxy was more complex than overthrowing its previous rulers. "Any reports of resistance movements or separatist activities?" he asked. "Minimal and declining," Chun replied. "Most species have accepted the new structure once they realize the benefits outweigh the costs. Food distribution programs have eliminated famine on 47 worlds. Medical aid has contained 3 potential plague outbreaks, and infrastructure repairs have restored communication to previously isolated systems." The success of humanitarian efforts had done more to legitimize human leadership than military threats ever could have accomplished. Species that had initially resented Earth's dominance found themselves genuinely grateful for assistance that arrived without demands for tribute or submission. President Martinez concluded her daily address to the galactic community from the same simple podium where she had delivered humanity's ultimatum 1 year earlier. Her words reached every inhabited world through communication networks that humans had rebuilt and improved during the months of reconstruction. "Citizens of the galaxy, humanity is pleased to report continued progress in our shared efforts to build a more equitable and prosperous future for all species," she said, her tone warm but carrying an unmistakable undertone of strength. "Today marks the first anniversary of what historians may call the Great Transition, when our galaxy moved from a system based on domination to one founded on cooperation and mutual respect." She paused, allowing her words to reach audiences on thousands of worlds where former subjects had become partners in galactic civilization. "We want to remind everyone that this transformation succeeded not through conquest or coercion, but because reasonable beings chose cooperation over conflict when presented with clear alternatives." The camera moved closer, and President Martinez's expression became slightly more serious. "For those who might wonder whether humanity's current policies represent permanent change or temporary necessity, let me be absolutely clear. We chose politeness and cooperation because we believe they produce better results than force and intimidation. That choice remains ours to make, and we will continue making it as long as others choose to work with us rather than against us." The transmission ended with the same diplomatic courtesy that had marked all of humanity's communications, but every viewer understood the message beneath the polite words. Earth had demonstrated its power by withdrawing support rather than attacking enemies. The lesson was clear: cooperation brought prosperity, while resistance brought isolation and decline. In the depths of space, automated monitoring stations continued their silent watch over jump routes and communication networks, ensuring that humanity would never again be caught unprepared by those who mistook patience for weakness. The age of human leadership had begun not with conquest, but with the simple demonstration that respect, once lost, could only be regained through genuine partnership and mutual benefit.